Hey everybody, I'm Joe and we're going to do another character build for the Marvel Multiverse TTRPG today. Here we go. As always, if there are rules changes when the full game is published later this year, we might have to come back and revise some of our concepts or recommendations based on any changes that might happen. Can we be honest, you and me, for just a second? You know what mechanic in TTRPGs I've never really cared for? Grappling. I know, it is a beloved mechanic in every TTRPG throughout the history of this type of game, and it has appeared in every game system that has combat mechanics. Grappling is a beloved action to do on turns for many players, both players themselves and GMs who are running games, and they tend to work in pretty much the same way in all TTRPGs, Marvel Multiverse included. Grappling tends to use the same action economy as an attack, but instead of doing damage, it reduces an enemy's speed to 0. The enemy would then have to use an action on their turn in order to break the grapple. Importantly for our conversation, the standard grapple mechanic still allows the enemy to attack as normal, just have a speed of 0. And I know that there are many situations where this can be beneficial. You might have an enemy that you want to interrogate later and you want to stop them from getting away. You might have a character that you want to stop from getting to some position on the board, and bringing the speed to 0 is beneficial. But when I've been a player and a game master in Marvel Multiverse and other games, I just have never loved grappling as one of my options. The reason is pretty simple. When we are looking at action economy, an enemy that is grappled is still perfectly capable of doing combat damage and attacking as normal. And while an enemy that has a speed of 0 is great, you know what's better? An enemy that's dead. An enemy that's dead is a lot better. And I don't love the action economy trade-off. If I expend my action economy in order to create a grapple, the enemy spends the same action economy to end it, and we're back to where we started. And so I just have never really utilized this mechanic. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe grappling has a fantastic action economy benefit on the board with certain characters and certain builds. And I decided to challenge my own assumptions today and build a character that predominantly grapples. In order to do this, I needed to think about what grappling does mechanically that I really love. And I gave it a lot of thought, and I think there is something here, something that is a wonderful mechanic on the board that you would love as a playstyle to create a character that predominantly grapples. And in order to understand my point on this, let's take a look at grappling from the enemy's point of view. There are a couple aspects to the grappled or grabbed condition in Marvel Multiverse. The first is that a grabbed enemy has a speed of 0 unless they can pick up the grappling character and carry them as part of their movement. Secondly, a character that is grabbed is actually somewhat likely to be hit by ranged attacks that are actually attacking the other character because of the close proximity. It's a specific aspect of the rules that is in Marvel Multiverse and is not in other games, and I really kind of like that. Thirdly, an enemy that is grabbed, in order to break out of the grapple, must make a check using melee or agility, their choice. If you are grabbed, you are one of two types of combatants. You are either a melee or a ranged combatant. Let's look at both in turn. A melee combatant that is grabbed is going to have a tough choice. They can either break the grapple, or they really only have a choice of attacking the grappling character. No other character is now a valid target on their turn. A ranged combatant, of course, is perfectly capable of attacking other characters on the board, not just the grappling character. However, they are an easy target for the grappling character to attack on that character's next turn, and so breaking the grapple is probably a self-preservation tactic. Either way, what's really important about these situations is that a grappled or grabbed character is likely to turn their action economy towards the character that is grappling, and therefore grappling is a fantastic way of controlling the battlefield and tanking. This leads us to a conversation about tanking. Tanking is a beloved way of playing TTRPGs and video games and building characters for both. And it is specifically a character that draws fire in order to protect allies. And let's talk about mechanically what a grappling character or a tanking character is really doing. A tank is not just somebody who's hard to kill. A tank is somebody that directs action economy towards themselves. And then they are a character that is built in such a way that directed action just is not as impactful. We usually make those attacks less impactful by making this character very difficult to kill, either with very high defense scores or really high hit points, or both. But the key thing that a tank does is remove action economy from being directed at your allies. And being difficult to kill is just a thing that makes that redirected action economy less impactful. So what we really care about with a tank is the ability to reduce action economy. In Marvel Multiverse, action economy is pretty simple. It's only three things. There is movement, action, and reaction. And a tank wants to limit the amount of action economy enemies on the board can either do at all, or the action economy that is directed towards allies. We would call a tank successful if that character made an enemy not be able to do some form of action economy, or make that enemy direct the action economy towards the tank. Either way, we have protected our allies, and grappling does both. Grappling reduces movement to 0 and is likely to redirect action economy attacks towards the tank rather than allies. And so this begs a question, a very important question. How do we measure the effectiveness of a tank? And this is a hard question because it basically asks the question, how do you measure something that doesn't happen? I think that there is an imperfect but usable solution to this question, and it is to think of action economy as points on the board. Let's take a look at the action economy of Marvel Multiverse. There's action, reaction, and movement. Let's say that each one of these things is worth 1 action economy point. We can think of it that way, and we can then calculate things and measure things that way. A tank character wants to remove as many action economy points off the board as humanly possible. So for instance, if we did something that reduced an enemy speed to 0, we would take 1 action economy off the board. That enemy's not moving. If we also then redirected that enemy's attack towards us as the tank rather than an ally, that removes another action economy point. If we have found a way to make an attack that enemy makes at an ally less effective, nullifying its effect, that is another action economy point. So there are 3 ways to reduce action economy. Make something not happen, redirect it towards ourselves, or if it's directed at an ally, make it ineffectual. All 3 are good tanking strategies. So that's what we are going to do today. We are going to build a tank, and we're going to use grappling in order to reduce action economy on the board. We want to make the best grappler we can, and we're going to measure how much action economy this character can remove from the board in an ideal round. Now, I'm not that great at naming my characters, so if you have a name, put it into the comments below. I'd love to hear it, but I'll be calling this character the Grappler. At rank 1, we are an average sized character, nothing special with the character build yet, and this character that we're making is an aspiring tinkerer, somebody who loves making and inventing, who loves fiddling around, creating things in a garage. Notably, he's not great at it yet, but he will be. And he's working on some grand ideas for things that are going to be effective on the battlefield. Maybe this is a character who doesn't feel that his superheroic abilities are nearly as good as those of his teammates, and really just has an inferiority complex and wants to simply protect his allies. Or maybe this is a character who lost somebody in his life and wants to direct his particular skills towards protecting the people around him, because that's what's personally meaningful. Either way, we're going to do our character build by focusing in on our melee ability first, and then making sure that we raise up our defense scores as well. We want this character to have a lot of hit points and be difficult to hit. So let's do point buy for this character, and we're going to take a -3 in our ego so that we have 8 total points to spend elsewhere in the character build. We're going to put 4 into melee. This would technically cap it, though more on that in a minute. We're going to put 3 into resilience and 1 into vigilance. So we're going to start with a 14 melee defense, a 14 agility defense, I'll explain how we got there, a 13 for resilience, which is 75 hit points, an 11 for our vigilance, which is 25 points of focus, and we're going to have 10s for our defense in ego and logic. I'll explain how we got there. I'd like to mention something about this ability score buy. We went into the martial arts power set, which increases your ability score cap for several factors, and one of them is melee. We could have, therefore, purchased up to 5 points in melee rather than 4. In order to have more hit points, I chose not to do this, but the cap extension is still there, and we will be taking advantage of it later in the build. We are, as I said, building a tank, and a tank is not just a bucket of hit points. I also want my tanks to have some really high defense scores. I want them hard to hit, and if you hit them, it doesn't do very much. And that is a very fun combination to play with, which means I need 2 abilities right off the bat at rank 1. I need one that's going to make my melee and agility defenses the same, and I need another that is going to make my logic and my ego defenses the same. So we will be taking on this character brawling, which makes your agility defense the same as your melee defense, and we will be taking integrity, which makes your ego defense the same as your logic defense. The power set we're going into at this rank is going to be martial arts. We've got a lot of stuff we want from the martial arts power set, starting right away with grappling technique. Grappling technique is a wonderful power. It's essential on this character. It is going to give you the ability to do a grapple check that also deals combat damage. We're not actually going to be measuring damage for this character, but there's no reason for us to completely ignore it. We might as well do some nice damage when we grapple a target. And the trait we're going to take at this rank, I was torn about it, but I think the best way to go is signature attack and make our signature attack grappling technique. This means whenever we do a grapple technique check, we are going to have an edge on that grapple. So now we have an edge for all of our grapples and they do damage, which is really nice. How do we measure the effectiveness of a tank in combat? I think we need to look at 3 things. First of all, how many action economy points in an ideal round of combat have we removed from the board? Secondly, how hard are we to hit? Thirdly, how many hit points do we have? And all of those I think are worth measuring. So on this character, if we averaged all our defense scores, we would have an average defense score of a 12 rounded down. We're going to have 75 hit points, and we are able to remove 2 action economy points from the board. That is going to be grappling 1 target, dropping their speed to 0, and directing attacks towards ourselves, thus the 2 action economy points. Let's do point buy for rank 2. We're going to get our melee to a 5, our resilience to a 4, vigilance to a 2, and our logic to a 2. Our character has had some flashes of brilliance and is now inventing things at a much higher pace. We're going to have defenses of 15 for melee and agility, 14 for resilience, and 12s for vigilance, ego, and logic. We'll have 100 hit points and 50 points of focus. One thing that's difficult on this character is I have a lot of powers I want, and they tend to be in disparate power sets, which means this character is power and power set hungry. It's just one of the downsides of the build, but at rank 2, we are going to go into the battle suit power set. That's right, our character has been building a battle suit. This battle suit is specific though. This battle suit that we're making is not made to make us tougher. It's not made to give us better defense. It's made to be able to lock down a battlefield and defend our allies. And we're going to take 2 powers inside of the battle suit power set right away. We are taking Extended Reach 1 and 2. Extended Reach 1 takes your normal reach and it multiplies it by 4. And Extended Reach 2 takes your normal reach and multiplies it by 10. So we now have a reach of 50 feet. And let's talk about the technical mechanics of grappling for just a second. In order to grapple, you need to make sure that you have a free hand and that the enemy is within your reach. That's it. And that's why there's no weapon that this character wields. I want the hand free to grapple. That's the whole point of the character. So we're not picking up a weapon the entire career of this character. But there's nothing about grappling that specifically stipulates that the enemy must be next to you. They just have to be within your reach. Now, grappling an enemy that is 50 feet away is going to negate the ability of your grapple, making them a possible target for ranged attacks that were actually directed at you, and I'm fine with that. If I can get next to somebody and gain that extra cover, I think it'd be really cool, but it's not an essential component of the build. What's important is we can grapple from 50 feet away. That also includes straight up. So let's talk about grappling characters that are flying. You will start running into flying enemies about rank 2 or 3. Flying is technically a movement action, and when you grapple someone, that character's speed in all movements is reduced to 0 unless they can carry you. And if the enemy that you grapple in the sky cannot pick you up and fly with you, rules as written, they fall to the ground and take falling damage. Let's talk about falling damage for a second. When a character falls, they gain a damage multiplier for every 15 feet they fall. So you take the amount of feet that they fall, you divide by 15, you round down, you roll a d6 for your Marvel die, and you multiply one against the other, and that's the damage they take. It's not a bunch, but it's something, and it's free damage, because when you grapple them, they take damage, and then when they fall, they take damage. I want this character to go up against flying enemies, because it's going to get even better in just a little bit, as you will see. But first, we need yet another power from the martial arts power set. We're going to take Crushing Grip. Crushing Grip is so much fun. This is a reaction power, and it is triggered when an enemy is grabbed. So a little point on reactions and triggers here. First, your reactions reset at the top of your turn. So something you do in your turn can trigger your own reaction. Your reaction does not have to take place on another character's turn. It just needs the triggering event. Secondly, one particular event can only trigger one reaction. So if we had multiple reactions, and we will on this character, that can be triggered by the same event, you can only use that event for one particular trigger. But please note the language that Crushing Grip is triggered when you grapple or when you have a character grabbed during a turn. That means you can grab them one turn and utilize your reaction for that scenario on another turn, and it's no problem, so long as you have the reaction to spend. All that said, Crushing Grip is great. It is triggered when an enemy is grabbed. You make a melee attack against their resilience modifier, and upon a success, they take damage and they are pinned. Pinned is amazing. Grabbing in this game, does not actually impose any sort of difficulty for making checks, but pinned does. They now have trouble on all melee and agility action checks, which includes attacks and includes the check to get out of being pinned, which you have an edge on. So that's amazing right there, but it gets even better because a pinned character has no ability to pick you up and move you. They must break the pin in order to move, unlike a grabbed character. And Crushing Grip gets even better than that. Let us say that there is no good enemy that is available for you to grapple on your turn. Or maybe both of your hands are completely tied up grappling enemies, which is completely possible. In that scenario, you can simply utilize your action to force an enemy that you have used Crushing Grip on to take damage. You do not have to roll to hit. They just take the damage and you utilize your action to do so. So once you've used Crushing Grip, if you don't have another use for your action, the enemy that you are pinning just takes the damage. I love it. And let's make our grapples even better still, because the trait we are taking at this rank is Massive. Massive simply makes your character big for all purposes of the game. And there's a couple aspects of being a big-sized character that are necessary for us. First, a big-sized character has a reach of 10 feet. not 5. Remember, Extended Reach 2 takes your current reach and multiplies it by 10. So we don't have a 50-foot reach for grappling, we have a 100-foot reach for grappling. The last aspect of being a big size character that's great for us is a big size character, rules as written, weighs somewhere between 400 and 1,500 pounds. Now don't forget, a character that is grabbed could move, but only if they have the ability to pick us up and carry us. I would state with my narrator that I want this battle suit that my character's made to be as heavy as possible in order to guarantee that that just doesn't happen. So let's talk about combat at this rank. We have an average defense score of 13, 100 hit points, and I am counting that we are able to remove 4 action economy points from the board. I considered it unlikely at rank 1 that we could grapple 2 enemies because we only had a 5-foot reach. They would have had to be physically next to each other. But now the enemies can be anywhere within 100 feet of us, and I deem it completely plausible that we can grapple 2 different enemies on 2 different turns. Now I know I took the reaction Crushing Grip, and that reaction theoretically would remove action economy. However, it removes the action economy of a character we have already grappled. So for the moment, I'm only going to say that we are removing 4 action economy points from the board, but I'll still take it. So hopefully you remember that when we went into the martial arts power set, we increased our cap for a few different traits, most notably for us melee. We're going to utilize that with point buy right now at rank 3. So we're going to get our melee to a 7, our resilience to a 5, vigilance and logic to 3s, which is going to give us defenses of 17 for melee and agility, 15 for resilience, and 13s for vigilance, ego, and logic. We will have 125 hit points, and we'll have 75 points of focus. Now, here is an interesting point. Why am I pumping so much into vigilance right now, bumping up our focus, and we don't have a single power that utilizes our focus? 2 reasons. The first is we eventually will have a power that utilizes our focus, and we might as well build it up slowly over time. The second reason is, don't forget, rules as written, when an enemy gets a fantastic success against us with an attack, technically that damage also is depleted from our focus, and this character absolutely does not want to be demoralized. That would give us trouble on the checks to grapple, which is the whole point of the character. So I'm building up our focus as a defense here. If you thought you wanted to lower the vigilance a little bit to make this character have even more hit points, I understand where you're coming from. We need to go into yet another power set here at rank 3, and we're going to be going into the Shield Bearer power set. Now, I know that we could have taken the armor powers inside of battlesuits to increase our own damage reduction, but we are a defender predominantly, and having our own damage reduction doesn't do very much. Reducing the damage to our allies is exactly the point of the character, and so I just need to get the shield powers and some other stuff from the Shield Bearer power set to make the concept work. This means we will be picking up Shield 1, which for the moment just does a 1 damage reduction for us. Damage reduction is amazing and I love it, and it's pretty necessary on a tank character. But we are going to use our damage reduction for a lot more because we are now going to take Hurled Shield Block. Hurled Shield Block is a reaction power, and that reaction is going to allow us to throw our shield and reduce the damage from an attack made against our allies by the damage reduction of our shield. There's a little bit of nuance to it. The attack against our allies must be one that targets their agility defense. So this won't always come up, but when it does, throw your shield and you add a 1 damage reduction for that attack. Your allies are going to love you for this. The last power we're going to take is Additional Limb. We've continued to tinker with our giant metal suit, and we've added 2 more arms. Now, when we have Additional Limb, we can either have 2 additional arms or a prehensile tail. We're taking the arms, and there is nothing in the power that indicates that the arms would have any different features than our actual original arms, which means that they have the ability to grapple, they have the ability to wield a shield, and they have the ability to stretch 100 feet away. Because here's the key thing with the shield powers. You need a free hand to grapple, and it is absolutely reasonable for the narrators to say that a hand that is holding the shield cannot also grapple. I would call that reasonable. So if we hold a shield, we might be able to throw it and deflect attacks, but we would reduce the number of enemies that we can grapple. That is why we need additional limb on this character. The trait we're going to take at this rank is Enhanced Physique. Now, Enhanced Physique is wonderful. It increases your cap for melee, agility, and resilience, the 3 physical traits. It also treats you as 1 size larger than you are for the purposes of picking up, carrying, and throwing things. But during combat at this rank, we're going to have an average defense score of 14, we're going to have 125 hit points, and we will be able to remove now 7 action economy points from the board. I'm assuming that on a perfect round of combat, we can grapple 3 enemies and remove their movement and action from the board, and we have 1 reaction for hurled shield block. We got Enhanced Physique at the last rank, and this improved our ability score cap for our melee. We're going to utilize that now. We're going to bring melee to a 9, we're going to bring resilience to a 6, vigilance to a 4, and logic to a 4. We'll have defenses of 19 for melee agility. We're going to have a defense score of 16 for resilience and 14s for vigilance, ego, and logic. We're going to have 150 points of health and 100 points of focus. We are not going to be picking up any new power sets on this character because we have a bunch of powers we want to take to really round out what this character can do, and the first one is Shield 2. So now we're going to have a 2 damage reduction for ourselves and for any ally that we get to use Hurled Shield Block to defend. The next power we're going to take is Do This All Day. Do This All Day is a fantastic power. It is going to allow you as an action on your turn to expend focus in order to heal health at a 2-for-1 discount. Amazing. But the real reason that we wanted Do This All Day is because it gives us access to Always Ready. Always Ready gives us another reaction that we can utilize for a reaction power that is within the martial arts power set. You know what reaction is in the martial arts power set? Crushing Grip. This means that we can use 1 reaction for Hurled Shield Block and still use a reaction for Crushing Grip, which is awesome. The next power we are going to take is Defense Stance. Now let's talk about the defense stance power and stances generally speaking, because there's a lot of interpretation here. Here's the way Defense Stance is written. You have an easy action on your turn to go into Defense Stance, which immediately imposes trouble on all incoming attacks until the first one hits. You then maintain it with an easy action on your turn and the cycle resets. Here's the problem. Easy actions don't exist anymore. The rules errata state that if something was an easy action, it is either going to be an action or it is going to be a free action, and the interpretation for what it should be is left open to your narrator. On one hand, Defense Stance is supposed to be easy to get into. It is something that we're taking at a relatively high level, so there is an argument that it should be free to go into Defense Stance right now. However, it's also a maintained power, and maintained powers are assumed to be a little bit more powerful than non-maintained powers, and so there's every reason for a narrator to say that Defense Stance takes an action on your turn to go into, but it is free to maintain going forward. I look at it and I think at rank 4 it should be free, but this is something that could be ruled totally differently by Marvel when the game is fully published. So have a conversation with your narrator. If your narrator will allow you to go into Defense Stance as a free action, take this power now and just have trouble on incoming attacks, which is great for a tank character. If your narrator wants this to be an action to go into, don't take this power, take Shield 2 instead. And the trait we're going to take at this rank is Combat Reflexes. We're going to get an additional reaction that we can use for anything, and we're going to be using it for Hurled Shield Block, adding yet another point of action economy that we get to steal from our enemies. So let's take a look at combat. We have 150 points of health, but we also have 100 points of focus. If we used all of it for Do This All Day, it's a 2-for-1 discount, and we would have a grand total of 350 points of health that enemies need to chew through. They're going to need to chew through it with an average defense score of 16, and ideally trouble on all incoming attacks. You are now pretty much impossible to kill. You also will be able to remove 8 action economy points from the board on a perfect round of combat. 6 from 3 grapples that remove an attack and movement from the board, and 2 reactions for Hurled Shield Block. Let's do point buy for rank 5. We're going to bring melee to a 10, resilience to an 8, vigilance to a 5, and logic to a 5. We will have defenses of 20 for melee and agility, 18 for resilience, and 15s for vigilance, ego, and logic. We're gonna have 200 hit points and 125 points of health. So let's talk about powers at rank 5. There's a power I really want, and it's only in the super strong power set. Now I could get it by doing surprising power as my trait and picking it up, and then having 4 powers at this rank. And that makes a lot of sense. However, I want my trait for something else, frankly. And that means that I'm in a really big quandary. I could delay the power I want and just utilize my trait next rank, but the stuff you put off to rank 6, you're not gonna use for all that long in the game, and I really want it now. On the other hand, there's not a lot else I want out of the super strong power set. Let's talk about why. You might think a great thing to do on this character is to take the super strong powers, which have effectively 2 different aspects to them. The first is they do a 1 damage multiplier for each level of super strong that you take, and that is something that we could utilize, right? We make melee-based attacks and we have not ramped our damage at all. And it'd be nice to have a little bit of damage on this character, especially to chew through any damage reduction that our enemies might have. The second thing that the super strong powers do is they say that you get a +1 to any checks that are not attack rolls that you make using melee. And you might think that that would count for our grapple, but it doesn't. The reason why is a standard grapple check is a check that is not an attack roll, and the super strong power would increase our likelihood of landing that particular grapple. But when we use grappling technique, it's worded differently. Grappling technique specifically says that you make a melee attack roll against an enemy, and on a success they take damage and are grappled. That means that it is counted for all mechanical purposes as an attack roll, and the bonus to melee checks from super strong would not apply. So specifically, super strong does not actually improve our ability to make grapple checks, which is the whole point of the character. And since I'm not making this character for damage, super strong to ramp damage isn't all that great either. As a result, I'm just not interested in putting super strong on this character. It's very much beside the point of what I'm trying to do. Defending my allies is way more important. And that's the quandary that we're in at this rank. You might move things around for what's best for you and your character concept, but I am delaying super strong, and those are my reasons why. As a result, I will be going into the super strong power set at this rank, but I'm going to predominantly be interested in taking shield 3 and 4, and that is going to give me the maximum amount of damage reduction for myself and for my allies. The last power is Quick Toss. Now, this is a reaction power triggered when you have an enemy grappled. So it really fits with our whole concept, but it is only in the super strong power set, not martial arts. We could have picked this up by using surprising power as our trait, but I want something different for my trait at this rank, and so I went into the power set instead. Either way, Quick Toss is really a nice fit for us. It's triggered when we have somebody grappled. We can now pick them up and throw them, and let's take a look at the rules for throwing. You can throw something the same size as you, a distance that is equal to your size, which we're just counting as height, plus 10, plus your melee score. At this rank, we have a 10 melee score, so if we were only 10 feet tall, we could throw somebody 30 feet, but it gets better. For every size that you are larger than the thing you are throwing, you can double that distance. Don't forget, with enhanced physique, we are treated as a huge character for the purposes of throwing things, not big. And that means that 30 feet that we can throw something is now quadrupled to 120 feet. You can also use this power to take the enemy and throw them into another enemy. And if you're going to use this power for damage more regularly, it's worth picking up super strength in order to empower these attacks. So what is the trait that I wanted so badly that I changed around the plan for rank 5 and 6? And the answer is determination. Determination means that you just do not gain trouble on action checks when you go into the demoralization territory. And we want the ability to spend our focus in order to heal and tank better. And we want to do it regularly. So This gives us the ability to spend those points of focus to be able to heal and not worry about demoralization effects. So at this rank, we have 200 points of health and 125 points of focus. If we used all of that focus to heal ourselves, we would have a possible hit point pool of 450 hit points. We also have a 17 average defense score. So it is nearly impossible to kill us, and it's nearly impossible to hit us, which I love. We are also utilizing 2 reactions on our turn for hurled shield block, and so we are still removing 8 action economy points from the board on an ideal round of combat. Let's finish up this character at rank 6. We're going to get melee to an 11, we're going to get resilience to a 9, vigilance to a 5, logic to an 8. We'll have defenses of 21 for melee and agility. We're going to have a 19 for resilience, 15 for vigilance, and 18s for ego and logic. We'll have 225 points of health, and we're going to have still 125 points of focus. The first power that we want is Brace for Impact. This is another reaction, but it can be utilized from the Always Ready additional reaction, so that's good. And it allows us as a reaction when we're hit with an attack to expend focus to reduce the health damage at a 1-for-1 rate. This might really come in useful to save your life. We're also going to take Shield Wall. Now, Shield Wall is fantastic. This immediately imposes trouble on all incoming attacks, and it doesn't take your action to engage it. It takes your movement. The idea is pretty simple. If you don't need to move, you need to hold the line, you can simply stand there, bring up your shield, and cause all incoming attacks to have trouble. You can maintain this by just giving up the movement on your next turn, maintaining your action. With a character that has a 100-foot reach to be able to grapple people and throw them, do I really need to be able to move all that much during combat? And a lot of the time, the answer is no. This gets even better because we have defense stance. And remember, while damage multipliers and reduction do not stack, trouble and edge do. You absolutely can have defense stance and shield wall up at the same time and cause double trouble for all incoming attacks, which I love. The last powers we're going to take are, we're going to do it. We're going to take Super Strong 1 and 2. I know that there are problems. I know they don't assist us in our grapple checks, but they will assist us for the damage from grappling technique, from the damage from crushing grip, and the damage from quick toss. So I kind of want them just to round out the capacities of the character. The trait we're going to take at this rank is going to be Battle Ready, which adds another 5 points of focus, and that's just always welcome. Let's take a look at combat for this character. We're going to have 225 points of health. We're going to have 130 total points of focus. If we spent all of our focus to heal ourselves, enemies would have to chew through 485 hit points to kill us. They'd have to be eating through defenses of an average of 18, and ideally double trouble for all of those attacks. I absolutely love how tanky we've made this character. Let's say that we utilized both of our reactions and our third reaction from Always Ready for Hurled Shield Block. We could remove as many as 9 action economy points from the board, which is really cool. So this character does exactly what we set out to do. We're going to be able to grapple characters from far away. They're not going to be able to move us pretty much at all. We're going to be able to do damage through our grapples. We're going to be able to throw people after grappling. We're going to be able to pin them to the ground and crush them to death. It's going to be awesome. And the only downside that I can see is that once we start running into enemies with damage reduction, our ability to actually hurt them really significantly drops off. But I'm not really that concerned about it because all of our ability to protect people is absolutely maintained. We've also gotten around the biggest problem that tank characters tend to have, and that's movement. Tank characters historically have a big problem with mobility, getting to where they need to be to defend allies. We have solved that in 2 ways. First, when you go to a larger size character, your movement increases by 5 feet, so we have a 30-foot movement speed. Secondly, I don't need to be next to an enemy in order to grapple them. They can be 100 feet away from me, and that gives me flexibility that most tank characters just don't have. I don't know what I'm going to do to build alternative tanking characters in the future, but I love where we wound up with this, and I think that we've utilized grappling in a really effective manner, and I think it'd be exciting to play this character. Anyway, that's the video for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, YouTube is literally made out of buttons. Press some of them, and I look forward to seeing you next time. All right, bye.